Is this the greatest cruise destination of them all? Join us as we spend 13 days with Scenic Eclipse on their Antarctica in-depth cruise.
We see whales, wildlife galore. We explore Antarctica by helicopter, by submarine, by kayak and zodiac, and we enjoy the magnificent unspoilt sanctuary that is Antarctica.
And we enjoy all of this aboard the luxurious 6-star expedition ship that is Scenic Eclipse. We hope you enjoy our episode.
We're Andrew and Leonie, and we like to cruise and travel.
Join us on our travels all over the world as we review a range of cruises, cruise lines, land tours, all sorts of shore excursions, and a range of hotels and resort holidays.
And remember to like and subscribe. This will be a 2-part episode dedicated to Antarctica on board Scenic Eclipse 1. Part 1 will be an episode dedicated to our experience in Antarctica, and Part 2 will be a deep dive review of Scenic Eclipse, the ship, including a ship tour. To begin with, I want to thank Scenic Eclipse for their gift of some of the video used in this episode. At the end of every Antarctic cruise, Scenic gift every passenger a professionally shot video of their particular cruise with highlights from every day. This is the first example of what I will call the Scenic 1%ers that all add up to making Scenic a spectacular cruise experience. Now on with the episode.
Our cruise left from Ushuaia in the very south of Argentina. We in fact flew into Buenos Aires on LATAM from Melbourne via a compulsory stopover in Santiago, Chile, a flight time of around 18 hours. So no matter where you come from in the world,
Yeah.
Buenos Aires is a long flight.
And there's time zone issues.
Yeah, so hot tip, if you're flying across multiple time zones like we did, arrive in Buenos Aires a few days early so that you can acclimatise to the effects of jet lag. You don't want to be starting such a special cruise suffering from jet lag.
Yeah, I think we had about 3 days in Buenos Aires and we needed every one of those days.
We did. We also have never been there before and loved it, but that's a story for another day.
That's a story from itself, just jet lag. Allow the time to acclimatise.
Yeah.
Scenic organised a charter flight to transfer all guests from Buenos Aires to Ushuaia. Now this is a 3-hour flight. Again, the distances in South America are vast, but what was to become synonymous and characteristic with Scenic, it was seamless and stress-free, with Scenic representatives travelling with us the whole way.
So, before we get on with it, we should address up front the elephant in the room, which is the cost.
It's a big elephant.
Yeah, we self-funded. There's no other way to put it. It's not a cheap trip. Among fellow guests we spoke with, the sentiment was that this is a bucket list destination, certainly what we thought as well, somewhere they really wanted to visit, and there was an acknowledgement that the cost hurt, but that was balanced off against the unique destination that is Antarctica. So that's a long way of saying that most of our fellow guests seemed like pretty normal people who had a strong desire to visit Antarctica, that's us too, and they'd made their own budgeting sacrifices to make this trip possible, as did we. And another factor is there is no other way to go to Antarctica. It's not like you can backpack. No. There's different cruises you can go on and at different price points, but the cruise is the only way to do it. This is an expedition cruise, and no spoilers, but we loved it. So let's get on with it.
On our voyage, our captain Radomir Novosel saw a nasty weather pattern fast approaching the Drake Passage, and he made the decision to open the engines up to flat out and make a fast dash to Antarctica, which we were pretty thankful about.
Mm-hmm. And they told us that. So
we left at about 5 p.m. and arrived in the Antarctic archipelago just short of 2 days later. Our crossing was 44 hours and the seas were moderate. We were glad we were on the state-of-the-art Scenic Eclipse with its stabilisers, as our crossing of the Drake was not too bad, but then again, I'm personally not prone to seasickness. Now, Leonie, you do suffer from seasickness. Did you get seasick, and how did you find the crossing?
Yes, I did get seasick on the way over and on the way back. Was it bad? We had similar sea levels both times, which was about medium.
Yeah.
Was it bad? No. All I'd say is be prepared. I had seasickness tablets that I took with me, and I also had sea bands. I don't know what of those things work and what in my mind, but it really wasn't too bad. I think I missed one meal on the way and one meal on the way back.
Let's face it, there's not a lot to do on the crossing day, so a lot of people take the opportunity to relax, and I'd say roughly a third to 40% of passengers had some level of sort of queasiness.
Yeah, we judged that by how many people were in the restaurant. Supposedly lying down helped. I don't know if that's true, but there's nothing, as you say, it's nothing really else to do on that crossing. So it's not a big deal. My advice is do not let your fear of seasickness on those 4 days, because it's 2 days there, 2 days back, hold you back from doing this cruise. It's worth it, absolutely worth it.
Now, once we arrived in Antarctica, there was no more seasickness for anyone. The sea state was incredibly mild down there, I would say almost lake-like. Very calm, very peaceful. You literally could have water skied behind the ship, it was so flat. For the whole time we were in Antarctica. Because there are so many harbours and coves that the ship can duck into, the sea was always calm and flat.
We were in Antarctica for nearly a week. We had multiple landings each day. So we won't do a blow-by-blow on every place we went to, don't want to bore you. We'll pick some highlights, and some of the clear ones were Charlotte Bay, Lemaire Channel, nicknamed Kodak Alley as it's so photo-worthy,
Beautiful.
Astrolabe Island and Deception Island.
So let's start with my absolute favourite day and location, which was Charlotte Bay. There's some video going up behind this, but I'm not sure I've ever been anywhere quite as magnificent. The temperature was a pretty balmy 0 degrees Celsius for Antarctica, but there was no wind at all, and it was pretty much a cloudless blue sky. I really will let the video describe how beautiful it was, but suffice to say, we saw leopard seals. We had our first so close encounter with a humpback whale, probably from about 10 to 15 metres away. The silence of Charlotte Bay, where only the sound of the whales coming up for breath through their blowholes, is something that I will remember. There were dozens of whales everywhere, and it was glorious. The day was capped off with a helicopter flight, but more about that later.
Lemaire Channel, that was spectacular. Our ship weaved over the course of 2 or 3 hours through the channel, dodging whales and icebergs which were all around us. We were allowed on the bridge 24 hours a day. That's a scenic eclipse.
I love that
thing. Yeah, I loved it too. From up on the bridge, we could see the captain and his team working their magic, getting us close enough, but not too close to anything that was gliding past us. We were out on deck at one point and we heard a cracking, thunderous explosion, and that was a glacier calving, which is...
What a treat.
Yeah, it is a treat. It was a term we learned up there, down there. So we've got
it was making a future iceberg.
Making a future iceberg.
Astrolabe was our first stop in Antarctica, and it was the colours of all the icebergs that will stay with me forever. Who would have known that icebergs could be blue? But they can. Every shade of blue, in fact, right through to white. We also had our first experience and smell of the thousands of penguins in Antarctica. And P.S., as cute as they are, they do smell alike.
They sure do. Deception Island, that was an old whaling station, slowly being reclaimed by nature and Antarctica herself. It was fascinating to see how people had attempted to live and profit down there, but all evidence of this on the history of this great continent is slowly being wiped away.
So let's move on to one of our favourite topics, which was the wildlife. I think it's fair to say we were blown away by the wildlife in Antarctica. So much of it, every day. Whales, leopard seals, orcas, 3 different types of penguins, and amazing seabirds like albatross and the arch enemy of all baby penguins, the naughty brown skewer.
The whales were amazing, and we saw so many of them. We saw whales all day, every day in Antarctica, and we never got sick of them. We saw minke whales, huge humpback whales, pods of orca whales out hunting with the scientists on board as part of the discovery team. We attended lectures on whales and we were fascinated by what we learned. We found out, for example, that every whale tail is unique and can be used to identify them in the same way that humans are identified by fingerprints. We also learned that whales from different regions of the world sing different types of whale songs.
Yeah, and they've actually recorded that and they played those whale songs to us.
And there's a website, Happy Whale, I think it was called, where you can track these things. But yeah, that was fascinating.
A special shout out to Scenic's discovery team of scientists and other experts. Their enthusiasm was infectious and their knowledge so readily shared and explained to all passengers. The Scenic discovery team was definitely one of the 1%ers that made this expedition cruise so memorable.
Absolutely. Now, we've already mentioned the penguins, but no discussion about Antarctica could be complete without talking about them. There are millions and millions of them, estimated 40 million. They're everywhere and in seemingly large numbers, which is terrific. We saw 3 types of penguins in the area we went: Adelie penguins, chinstrap penguins and gentoo penguins. We were told not to approach any wildlife or get too close, the rule's 5 metres, but that was often difficult because the penguins are so inquisitive that they'll literally follow you. We asked about that and the discovery team said that they don't see us as predators, so that was fun. You really can't help but fall in love with the penguins. That was so cute and a real highlight of the trip.
Let's move on to talk about the activities on board Scenic Eclipse. The helicopter ride was simply awesome. A true rock star experience to take off and land on board your ship. The flight over Antarctica was a bedazzlement to the senses.
Bedazzlement?
We saw whales. We flew over crevasses, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
We saw the ice plateau that leads all the way to the South Pole. We flew over glaciers and we saw the modern engineering masterpiece that is Scenic Eclipse, silhouetted as a pin drop against the magnificent landscape of Charlotte Bay. Not a cheap experience, at about $750 US per person, but a true pinch me moment.
Worth every cent. Now, I wasn't so keen, but you had a go in the submersible. What did you think?
Yeah, look, it looked beautiful. I was lucky enough to have an experience and it was a true once in a lifetime experience. There are only a couple of ships that go to Antarctica that have submersibles or mini submarines. So our pilot was telling us that there's probably only a couple of hundred people that have ever been down in a submersible in the part of Antarctica that we went to. I felt very safe, the visibility was fantastic, and we went from great light at the surface to full darkness 60 metres down, and we're reliant on the submarine's lights to see the ocean floor and all the marine life down there. I loved it.
Now, something that's free for all guests because it's included, and something that we both grew to love, we didn't have to grow to love, we loved it, was our twice daily rides in the Zodiacs. We saw so much and experienced so many things from the Zodiacs that I wouldn't like to go to Antarctica again without having that experience. They were really stable, the staff knew how to get you on and off by grabbing arms, so no one slipped or fell when entering or exiting. One of my favourite times was when the expedition leader turned the atboard up,
that was cool.
And we just floated in the silence looking at the wildlife.
Listening to the whales
The blows, yeah. You become quite an expert in the whale blows. Another time we ploughed through pack ice on the Zodiac. That was really cool as well.
It was. The Zodiacs were also the method by which we got to land each day. They were driven into the shallows and effectively beached so that passengers could just throw their legs over the side. There was always somebody to hold on to. I never saw anybody fall or stumble, and staff were always on hand to help and hold anyone that was a bit nervous or anybody with mobility issues.
Yeah, don't be afraid to get on a Zodiac. Absolute highlight. Another amazing experience on this trip was sea kayaking through ice, past gigantic icebergs and within sight of big humpback whales. I was a bit nervous about that.
We actually got so close that we almost worried that the whales were going to
kayak was going to capsize.
They were going to come up between the kayaks.
There was about a dozen kayaks in our group with a couple of tour leaders, and we gently paddled around for an hour or so. The kayaks were very stable. Again, no one capsized or fell in the water. Again, I was worried about that.
So you were a bit nervous. How did you find the experience?
My balance and me, not the best of friends. And you don't want to be the person that falls in. No, it was they had it down to a fine art. There was no issue.
So any negatives with the sea kayaking?
There was one, and that is that I got really, really, really cold. So that would have been my fault that I didn't dress properly, and it was my fingers and toes.
I got cold too. It was fingers
and toes. So I think I did double layer. I think I did, but I'd triple or quadruple.
Yeah.
But that was, bad luck.
Would you do it again?
I'd do it again 10 times over and be cold. Whoopie-doo. It was fabulous.
So now let's move to some questions. Leonie, can I ask you what your favourite experience was in Antarctica?
The helicopter was amazing, as we've said, but honestly the highlight for me was the Zodiacs. Mm-hmm. Either the cruising or using them to cruise to land, either. Just being in the Zodiacs, I felt like a real explorer. They were fun the way they scooted along, they felt safe, they gave us superb access to the ice and the wildlife. I loved them. We'll put some photos up and you can see how wide our smiles are. But what did you think?
Yeah, the helicopter experience was out of this world, no doubt about it, a real privilege. And yes, the Zodiacs were also amazing, and being a nautical junkie, I love them. But perhaps the most surprising thing for me was what an amazing viewing platform the ship itself was. Some of the best views of the trip were actually had from the decks of the ship, especially given the elevation.
Yeah.
It was probably the best place to see the whales, mm-hmm. And also gave unrivaled views of the landscapes of Antarctica. So for anyone with mobility issues, I actually think this is a cruise where you could see a lot and get a great experience, even if you were not to get off the ship very often.
Even if you didn't get off at all. Yeah, I agree with you.
What surprised you the most?
I was surprised at how much the landscape and the wildlife took my breath away. The ship too, but we'll come to that next episode.
Was the crossing of the infamous Drake Passage worth the effort and discomfort in your mind?
100%. Just take seasickness tablets, bands, whatever works for you. It's a small discomfort for a big, big payday.
Wow.
So, a question for you, Andrew. Antarctica was something you'd long talked about. Mm-hmm. You told me you didn't want to do one of those scenic flights that don't surprise you. You wanted to do a cruise, you wanted to do it properly. Sometimes when you have really high expectations about something, you can be a bit disappointed. Not you personally, generically you.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, did it live up to your expectations, or were you disappointed?
Yeah, look, I think it was an adventure of a lifetime. Probably one of the areas, polar explorations, one of the personal sort of nerd areas that I've always loved. Shackleton, Scott, Amundsen. I really wanted to go there. I really wanted to have some sort of Antarctic experience, and it actually exceeded my expectations. I had no idea how large Antarctica was, how pristine it was.
Yep.
I had no idea of the level of wildlife down there. It was quite humbling to see how over the past 100 years or so the wildlife has come back, and it seems to be booming, and that's something that we really need to protect and look out for future generations. I loved it. I wouldn't mind going back. So Leonie, would you recommend a cruise to Antarctica?
Yes, I would. I was interested, but I wasn't desperate. If it wasn't for your super level of interest over many, many years, I don't even know if I ever would have gone. I would have just thought, oh yeah. But I'm so glad that we went. It was truly a highlight of my life.
Why? Why?
Well, it was so different. It was so special to be able to do it together. All the things you said, the wildlife, the size. I'm even feeling a little bit teary now. I was moved so many days.
It was quite emotional, wasn't it?
Yeah, at just the grandeur, how pristine it was, the wildlife, seeing whales. I don't know, I hope I never get too old to see or hear a whale blow and go, it was just, there were so many that it touched my soul, as cliche as that might sound.
That expedition team added so much richness to the experience with their lectures and their enthusiasm.
They did. I mean, it was a job for them, but you can't fake the level of enthusiasm that they had. It's a limited season for a start. I feel like anyone that we spoke to, and they're very approachable, thought that this was like they were pinching themselves because they were getting paid to do this.
When we say that, they're probably only in Antarctica for 3 to 4 months a year at best.
Yeah, and they might only ever do one season. But
most of the expedition team were masters or PhD level scientists.
Yeah.
So they were really
bird experts, whale experts, ice experts. I didn't even know there was such a thing. They all had fancy names. That definitely added to it. But there was just everything about it, including the ship. Everything about it was just so much better than I could have expected. On to the opening question, or returning to the opening question of this episode. Andrew, is Antarctica the greatest cruising destination of them all?
Well, of the 14 cruises we have done so far, I would say yes, absolutely. For me, Antarctic was like a different world, completely unspoilt and pristine. As many of my fellow passengers kept remarking to us, truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So, I would recommend it to anyone. Just save your pennies though, because it's not cheap.
Sorry, my little was once in a lifetime. Let's cross fingers, it'll be more than once in a lifetime. So that's it for this episode. In our next episode, we're going to take an in-depth look into the 6-star Scenic Eclipse, the world's first luxury expedition yacht. We'll take you on board Eclipse and explore whether she really is as good as all the hype. So don't miss that one.
Otherwise, don't forget to throw us a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.